Welcome back, family. We are about to destroy the lie that is holding the sun god model together, and it's a lie known as gravity that dates way back to the year 1666. Of course, a lot of things that have to do with space came about in that specific year. It wasn't just Isaac Newton working by himself, but this guy, Isaac Newton, just so you're clear, was not just a physicist. He was into a lot of unique and strange things, some of them being alchemy related, magic, looking for the philosopher's stone, things like that, that most of us never heard about in school. I was just told that an apple hit him on the head, and that was all this genius needed to discover something that is keeping us from falling off of a spherical object in all directions while moving hundreds of times faster than a bullet, twirling around, tilted, spiraling through the galaxy at, nearly 500,000 miles per hour. But gravity is keeping everything in place perfectly so that we can have our sunrises and the moon, of course, going in that circuit above us as well, facing the same direction at all times. But the things I'm going to show you, I want to clarify it's not just from head knowledge that I've had and my scientific background. A lot of this stuff is things that have been revealed as we were blessed with an outpouring of wisdom and knowledge this past fall through late spring, where we were working with CreationStandard and bringing the truth to families around the world. What a blessing it has been, and we are going to be doing it again. And it's something that we want you all to experience if you can join. If you're doing homeschool, or even if you're not, you want to supplement your children's learning, give them a strong foundation, or your own learning. It's for all age groups pretty much, except for, the young children. Prior to age 7, when you get younger than that, it's not as easy to benefit from all the lessons, but you can still benefit from some. And so we're going to be talking more about that throughout this summer. Classes will start September 2nd. Make sure you have registered. You can always pay at any time, but make sure you've registered if you don't want to miss out on that. That way, we'll have your email address and we can send you a reminder before we start. And you can also order your books if we have them for your specific class. I'm almost finished with the Earth Foundation book, and then I have to do the other three. Don't really have a whole lot of time, so I'm going to have to be working around the clock to get those done. I would love to have them done before classes start. May not be possible, but that is where we are now. Also, if you missed the announcement, I will let you know that my brother will be offering 2 classes, not for specifically CreationStandard, where we can combine the discounts. You'll have to go through him for this. This will be him working sort of, alongside what we're doing, same mission, same goal, bringing the truth of creation to people. But he is a math teacher. I am not and cannot do that. But he will also be doing a biblical history class. And I think it'll be really huge going through world history from the biblical perspective, which is the provably true perspective, looking at all the artifacts and prophecies there, going through the timeline. So you can register for his as well to let us know what to expect, how much fundraising we have to do. We do not want to turn people away who cannot afford the classes and the experience. And so we're looking for sponsors, still doing that, but I will get back to the discussion. If you have any questions about that, go to the website, creationstandard.com. We have all sorts of information up there for you guys, as well as how you can support the cause and what that support goes to. You can read about it. Scroll down right there on the bottom, different options to donate to make this possible. And so back to our standard programming here, or deprogramming, I should say. I'm going to talk about gravity and that warping of space-time, because gravity is said to be, like we mentioned earlier, holding everything to the globe, but it is a warping of space and time, which space and time are two separate things. And if you can warp time, then time travel should be possible. But they are saying you're warping both space and time at the same time, as if they are super glued together. And when they show you how that works, they usually have a flat surface. And when they demonstrate that in the classroom, they use a large object like a bowling ball laid in the middle of some spandex material that's stretched out over a flat disc. And they make fun of us and use flat disc models. They're using a flat disc model to represent gravity. Things would fall off the edge of this. If the warping of space-time is what causes gravity, everything would be on a flat plane. And so space-time is flat according to these models. Can't be going in all different directions. It has to be flat in one direction for their little loop-de-loop thing to work, because what they do is they'll roll some marbles down this cloth and they'll spiral around and eventually smack into the sun right here at the middle. That's what that bowling ball represents, the sun. Sure, you guys have seen that. If not, you can use your imagination and just understand that sometimes things will fall off the edge, but if they don't fall off the edge, they'll do the little toilet bowl swirl until they come crashing into the largest object. But with space, they say that doesn't happen because there's no friction and things just keep happily spiraling in circles perfectly, so that we have a clock above our heads in the sky perpetually with all that renewable energy. And so now I want to talk about something that I didn't even realize when I was growing up. I thought that if you went a couple hundred miles away from the world, that you would just start floating. It was just a weightless area right up there. But that's not how it works. You would have to be about 13 million miles away, they say, from Earth to start feeling weightless and be free of the Earth's pull on you. If you were up there where, let's say, the ISS is, and the ISS stood perfectly still, you would only weigh about 20 pounds less than what you weigh now, they say. Gravity is 90% of what they say Earth's gravity is when you're up there. And so you'd weigh 10% less than what you weigh now. Depending on your size, that'll vary. And so you could walk around if they made this thing stand still. It is falling in a circle. That's how they say these orbits work. It's falling downwards, but it's going outwards so fast, keeping up with that 0.666 feet per mile squared curvature and just falling in a happy little circle at 17,500 miles per hour. And so lots of different ways they could have faked being in zero gravity back in the day. I bet this is where Star Lab was and how they were, making this stuff look really realistic back in the day. It looked like they were really, before their multi-layered virtual augmented reality technology and AI, which is about to take over fake space. Back then, they were really floating around, it looked like, and I believe they were using things like this, doing those zero G plane rides where they essentially fly up into the air, come back down, and if you can go pretty high and then go down at a 45-degree angle and have some really good footage. And they were showing highlight reels back then, so they did a lot of really good fake space back in the day. However, sometimes when they're pretending to do their orbit, they get caught telling lies. So here is a breakdown from Taboo Conspiracy talking about them stopping on a dime when moving this fast, which would have murdered everyone aboard. Fortunately, this is just a model hanging over, a green screen, whatever they're doing. I don't know, but it's definitely not doing what they say it's doing. And you can see that for yourself right here.
This is a small but indisputable proof that NASA lied to us about their space program. A lot of people can see the obvious, that NASA lied about the moon landings. But this confirms, without question, that NASA lied about everything else related to space. Furthermore, if NASA lied about their Gemini program, you must logically presume that NASA continues to lie about everything. You can find the original video here at around the 27-minute mark, and I'll have a link in the description. According to the official story, as narrated by one of the alleged Gemini 9 astronauts, in early June 1966, NASA's Gemini 9 spacecraft was orbiting at a speed of 18,000 miles per hour when it rendezvoused with the so-called Augmented Target Docking Adapter, or ATDA. You can read about this alleged NASA mission here. Here's the original video, unedited.
This is the rendezvous from above. We're coming down on the ATDA over the Indian Ocean. And so you really know you're moving. Here we're plunging down from above, and the ATDA is going across out of the Indian Ocean. We've just passed the Sahara Desert. We're coming into less than 1,000 feet now.
There's no question that you're really moving at 18,000 miles an hour. There's no question that you're really moving at 18,000 miles an hour.
As you can see, while supposedly flying at 18,000 miles per hour, Gemini 9 abruptly stopped on a dime and then resumed flight and caught back up to the ATDA, all within a few seconds. That's a change of speed of approximately 36,000 miles per hour in just about 3 seconds. That certainly would have killed everyone on board. There was
So that was a good breakdown by Ben from Taboo Conspiracy. I'll leave the full video in the description for you guys to replay that and see how fake it is. But they are faking being in orbit because it doesn't follow the principles they say. Otherwise, they could do it real easy. And I do believe they have technology up there that can stay in continuous flight, but I don't believe that you would just float around if you were up at that height. I could be wrong. There could be some unique properties of the firmament that allow that, but I don't believe that they are because they've had to fake it. And if it's real, you wouldn't have to. Well, I mean, unless like maybe it's an extremely dangerous things going on up there that are obviously in place to keep us from doing some of the things that mankind has already tried to do. Tower of Babel type of stuff. I'm not saying it's a pleasant environment up there, but I know above where the throne is, it's quite pleasant. And so right here, you also have another thing that helps the lie fall apart. They say you have to go at a certain speed to stay in that orbit. Well, they have a thing called geostationary orbit, where satellites are allegedly 22,236 miles away, moving at a speed of only 7,000 miles per hour. And they are not coming downwards. They are somehow staying with the curve. Thought you had to go 17,500 miles per hour to stay with the curve. Now they've got more curve, a little further away, and they're just staying above the same place in the sky. The problem with this is that we're told the moon's path changes due to our tilt. The same concept would apply to geostationary satellites. They would be changing like the moon, up and down, and the sun as well, up and down, even though the sun and moon have been known to go north and south at the same time, one going north, one going south. That doesn't make sense on the globe. But the geostationary satellites aren't impacted by the tilt, probably because they are balloons, high altitude balloons above the four winds somewhere, floating where they need to be floating. And these things are not a conspiracy. They are real. They are up there. Lots of them. I would say probably thousands of these things. Really nice, well engineered balloons. And so gravity is something that is about to really just fall apart. We've talked about gravity before when we were looking at the tides. Just to refresh your memory, we talked about how the tides work on the biblical earth. When you have the globe earth, you have a giant bulge of water on both sides of their imaginary globe. And gravity's causing one of those bulges. But how is the gravity pulling this direction causing the water over here to stick out? They just say it's inertia. This little world starts getting squished by inertia somehow. So the moon's gravity is pulling and somehow squishing, which makes this water stick out, as if this water's all connected by some solid object, this fluid water, pushing itself outwards. So the moon's gravity, they say, is mostly to blame for this phenomenon. Most illustrations have the moon really close to the world. When you start looking at the scale, though, of their model, imagine this little tiny dot over here causing trillions and trillions of pounds of water to stick out on this side, a few feet higher, and a few feet higher on this side at the same time. Very unlikely. Now, check this out. This is what they say causes those tides. You have those two bulges, and the world is rotating through the bulges. This is according to the experts. So if you were a person and you were bolted down to the world, you would drown every day and you would go under. Now, hopefully you'd be over 3 feet tall. But right there, I mean, just imagine. And they say, of course, Earth is pudgier at the equator, higher than Mount Everest at the equator. That's how much taller it is. You would think all these continents would just slam under that water. We'd have floods every day, tsunamis every day. Quite the different world we live in if that was happening. But that's what they say is causing our tide changes. And not only that, this is where it gets weird. You see how the moon is illustrated as being straight above the bulge? They say it's not straight above where it's lifting. Somehow its gravity is ahead of itself, lifting it up. And there's a thing called tidal lag where the moon is behind the bulge. Think about that. It's lifting trillions of pounds of water or tons of water upward ahead of itself. And so almost like it has a fishing pole sticking out, lifting up the water. And so that's called tidal lag. That's a phenomenon that I was never taught about when I was learning about tides. It was always very simple. There's two high tides and two low tides every day. Then I pulled up a map of the tidal frequencies and found out this year, I'm in my 40s now finding this stuff out, that it's not just two tides every day like the globe would necessitate. It changes even on the same continents. Look at America. It has your semi-diurnal tides, which are your typical two high, two low tides per day. But on the backside, it's mixed. And up north, you have one high and one low per day. They forgot about those two bulges of water they're rotating through. They just do it once per day. Very interesting. You also have mixed semi-diurnal tides, where it's a mix of one or two per day. It can't decide what kind of globe it lives on that day. It just doesn't know. And so that was what we taught this year. And then I found out just yesterday something extra. In addition to those three options, there's a fourth option where a body of water can have 0 tides per day, as if their narrative isn't 100% correct. You aren't just rotating through these two bulges. Sometimes there's only one bulge, depending on where you're at. Sometimes there's none. So it'd be an odd-shaped globe if it were a globe with the same principles they tell us it has. And so that is just a quick review of tides. But what we talked about back then, this is going to be important for further destroying the lie of gravity. You have water that is considered to be diamagnetic, meaning it is repelled by a strong magnetic force. You can demonstrate that in the lab. Everything is affected by magnets. You're either strongly attracted, weakly attracted, or repelled by a magnetic force. And so there's different variations of that. You can see water here being repelled by this magnet. Its surface tension isn't even allowing it to come together. Its cohesion and its cohesive and adhesive properties, it's avoiding that magnetic field. That's really cool. And so lots of things in this world can be proven to be impacted by magnets. And so things like water and wood, those are diamagnetic. Stone can be paramagnetic. But then things like iron that are going to stick really hard to the magnet, those are ferromagnetic materials. So you have lots of different types of magnetism. But the moral of the story is a magnetic power can move water. So what if, just maybe, instead of water being lifted, trillions of pounds of it, while the gravitational force is ignoring every other object around it, just lifting trillions of tons of water upward 3 feet, selectively, again, skipping all the ships and everything else, only going for those objects. What if it's not a pulling, but it is a pushing? So that when you look at what would happen to water if there was a large object in the firmament, a luminary, that had something to do with these tides, because it does appear the moon has something to do with them, this large object having its unique properties, some of them being magnetism. There is a change in a magnetic field during eclipses. So there's something magnetic going on. We know that. And so how cool would it be if those two bulges were happening with a tidal lag aspect, the moon lagging behind? Imagine if the moon were right here, causing one bulge and another bulge on the biblical earth. It makes far more sense than the globe narrative. We can prove that these properties are at work. But now we're going to fully debunk not just the space narrative, but the gravity narrative when it comes to things like plants. This is something you've probably learned about in biology class, where plants are said to grow upwards due to a phenomenon known as gravitropism, which has everything to do with the pull of gravity, they say. That plants have these unique properties within their cells, specialized things called statocytes, which contain starch-filled sacs called a myoplast, and that when the plant's orientation changes, let's say you knock it over, it's going to understand which direction it's oriented and try to grow upwards. And so this gravitropism has been seen in action. I thought that gravity had everything to do with this when I was growing up. However, I found out that they were claiming to grow plants in space. And my thought was, how are they growing plants in space if there's no gravity? And so I looked it up. How do they grow plants in space? And they tell us that plants are growing in space using specialized systems that provide necessary resources like water, nutrients, and light. They forgot about gravity. And so they are growing them in a gravity-free environment, allegedly. That debunks their lie because we teach students that plants know up and down and that they can figure it out, which they can by intelligent design inside their cells, knowing which way is up and which way is down. And I had a thought about this, thinking about the information from the tides, how there's most likely a magnetic aspect. And I wondered if plants could grow differently if placed near a magnet to prove that magnets are impacting their growth, not gravity. And I found out that many years ago, a scientist was figuring out just that. So here is a man who's going to tell you what magnets can do to plants, or I guess a news reporter and a man telling you what magnets can do to plants. I didn't know this. I think this should be common knowledge amongst farmers. Maybe it is, but this is fascinating. Check this out.
If you're like most people, your only use of magnets consists of placing them on the refrigerator door. But as we hear from Erica Ingelson, scientists are cultivating new uses for the world's most powerful magnets.
Imagine if your plants and vegetables could germinate twice as fast as they do now. This could soon become reality, thanks to the research of Florida State engineering professor Dr. Qing-Jeng Chen, who has been conducting research to determine the effects of powerful magnets on plant life. Chen has been working with magnets for the past 4 years and has found that they dramatically affect the speed of plant growth. Chen and his colleagues conduct their research at the National High Magnetic Field Laboratory, the only user facility of its kind in the Western Hemisphere. The laboratory develops and provides a variety of research magnets at the highest fields available in the world. Using a 1.5 Tesla magnet, which is 30,000 times stronger than the Earth's magnetic field, Chen exposed plant and vegetable seeds at different time intervals. In addition, he used a control group of seeds that were not exposed to the magnets at all. The seeds were then planted, and after several days, Chen found that the seeds exposed to the magnets grew more rapidly than those not exposed.
It's just very obviously they are growing twice, 3 times faster than those non-exposure ones.
Wow. It's growing 2 to 3 times faster by being exposed to magnetism, as if they now know which direction to grow faster. Fascinating. And again, everything in this world is impacted by magnets, and our world has a magnetic field. That is something that proves that we are most likely dealing with magnetic properties when it comes to things like gravity to some degree. You can even cause people to levitate with a magnetic field. In fact, scientists have been able to levitate animals with their diamagnetic properties. So you and I would be diamagnetic. They were able to levitate a frog back in the day, and everybody thought that was really cool. But the scientist who did that said, guess what? We could even do this with a person if we had strong enough magnets. And so you can do levitation. Think about that. We can levitate if we had the magnet set up with a powerful enough force. It would probably feel like you're being squished because it is pushing. We are repelling the magnet. But the frog that they had float inside this magnetic field, it was okay. It was unharmed, allegedly. And so I think that is one way that you could fake being in zero gravity. And it might be why, hair looks like it's so stiff, everything's just being squished together. I doubt it. I think that would just be such a hard task to pull off, but you never know. They might be able to do it that way. It'd be far easier to use the green screens and the wires and all that. Now, when it comes to the gravity of this lie, how things came about, why they were doing this, we've talked a lot about that in the past. If you haven't seen those types of videos, check out the ones I'm going to link in the description for you, who they are, why they lie, those types of videos. I'll try to leave them there so you'll understand it, because this lie goes way back. And like I said, a lot of things were going on in 1666, gravity being one of them, pushing the sun further and further away. But as you look at their timeline, people involved with the lie, a certain organization the Jesuits, which happened to form a merger with the Masons to create the Illuminati in 1776, they had a hand involved with a lot of these distances getting further and further away. And so, what happens when you start investigating that aspect? Well, I found this out too the other day that according to a Jesuit historian named Joseph F. McDonnell, in his book, Companions of Jesuits, A Tradition of Collaboration, where he writes that it is a challenge for historians to find a single significant scientist of the 16th, 17th, and 18th centuries who was not in some way involved with the Jesuits and their colleagues, as students, as teachers, as relatives, as collaborators, as adversaries, as rivals, or simply as personal friends. So this is from a historian, and he says it's a challenge to find a single scientist, a significant scientist. So one of the ones that you would probably know their name. If you know their name, it's a challenge to find one that wasn't involved with that organization. I think that is extremely telling. And the people that were doing these things, people like Christian Huygens, Isaac Newton, Tycho Brahe, Copernicus, all of them, they didn't even have the technology and resources we have now. Copernicus didn't even have a telescope. Tycho Brahe, he was a pretty good genius. He was actually geocentric. He believed the world was stationary and that everything moved around us. But he had his work after he passed away, was poisoned, taken up by Kepler, who had a magnification telescope of 20 to 30 times, and then, of course, Newton with his 30 to 35 times, and then Christian Huygens 43 times, and now we've got Nikon P1000s 125 times. And so we have a lot of technology now. People have seen far too much. And so measuring distances to the sun, creating all these theories that require gravity, need people to come up with some crafty little lies. And one of them was that, of course, they could triangulate using Venus to tell us how far away the Earth is. Of course, you'd have to know how big Venus is to even come close to getting an accurate number. And it's hard to tell when things are in front of a light source how big they are. We can conclude that this sun is larger than the airplane and Venus. That's a good conclusion to have. Otherwise, both of them or either one of them could be blocking the sun. It's not. And so you can do some process of elimination stuff, but you can't tell how big something is when it's that far away. Like this bird. Is this bird as big as Venus? No. How close is it? We can't tell from this camera angle. We have no clue. Now, if the guy watched the bird fly away and knew how fast it was going and all of that, he could do some calculations and say, okay, that bird was 20 miles away. But we don't know. When we see something that's always above our heads, we don't know the distances. No one's ever landed on any of these things. We have no clue. And Venus, another clue that it's a lie, according to their narrative. It's really there. It is a chief star that was mentioned in Enoch. But this depiction of it being an Earth-like planet, one that came about in 1974, this is what it looked like. We talked about this before. Check out the outer edges. Trying to get a measurement, trying to push that sun further away while inventing the lie of gravity. Well, NASA in the 1970s took this picture, sent it back to us. 1974. Problem is, everyday people started taking pictures of Venus and it looked nothing like that. Here's my photo with the Nikon P900 on the right. This very bright light. I mean, this is a bright light in the firmament. And it looks like this. And I thought, wait, I thought it was like blue and white and had clouds. Why does it look this bright from so far away? Given the inverse square law should make it look less bright than it did up close from their Mariner mission. Well, NASA came along and produced another image that looks more like what people were taking. And I thought, man, where did this come from? Looks nothing like the Mariner image. Well, they said, oh, yeah, it was one that we used data from the Mariner mission to create. Why would you do that? They didn't use data to make this. They took a picture. Now you're using data to make it look more like what we see, just slightly darker. Now it kind of looks more like Jupiter's color. Very telling. They are lying to us. Here's a professional photographer here. He says he selected the best 1,225 images out of 20,000 and stacked them together to get this image. Even then, it doesn't look like their Mariner mission image. Still doesn't really look like mine either. Mine is really bright, and I tried using a cell phone light to adjust the exposure, and still, it is just so bright. It is hard to get a good photo of Venus or video. Video actually might be a little bit easier, but that is a challenge in itself. And so you have a lot of people working together. Albert Einstein, his theory of general relativity, in partnership with someone inventing the Big Bang who just happened to be a Jesuit. And like that historian said, it's hard to find a significant scientist. I think Albert Einstein would classify as one of those who wasn't in collaboration with one of these people. And so it's a lot to take in, but the lie destroys itself when you really put it to the test. And that is what has been fun as we have worked with Creation Standard with the guidance of the Holy Spirit. It's not something we were able to do on our own. Our Father was with us as we put these lessons together and collaborated with people around the world. Something that was a lot of fun. And I really hope that more people can join us on this adventure and register. And even if you're not sure and you have been feeling led to do this, give it a try. Just try it out. And you can always stop along the way and say it's not for me. But try it out. I really don't want people to miss out. It's something that I'm not sure how long we'll be able to do this financially. And so we are hoping for more support, but it's one of those things that is life changing. It has brought husbands and wives closer together. It's brought families closer together going down this journey because we're putting everything our Father says to the test and we are finding proof after proof, and it's overwhelming. Not just with earth science, we also do life science. And now, like I said earlier, my brother is going to be starting up Foundation Standard. So he's not like my employee or anything. We're not getting paid enough to have an employee yet, but he is doing this just like we are. And so it's separate. So make sure if you want to support him, I highly encourage you to do so. He has taken a huge leap of faith and experiencing the nervousness and the anxiety that comes along with that, no matter how big of a man of faith you are. Seems like anxiety likes to attack, especially when you're laying there at night. And he has worked as a teacher with a steady paycheck for 18 years or so, maybe a little over 17. I think it might be 18 years. He has one extra year on me. And so if you want to support him, please do. He is about to experience his first month without a paycheck as we await our launch in September, where things will get better, hopefully, but we don't know what's going to be happening in the world. And so things are seeming to ramp up, but you can register for his classes down here, get his information, and also register for our biblical earth and life science classes here. It's all in one place. And so registering doesn't mean you have to pay. But to get your class codes, you will have to pay unless you have financial hardship. Let us know. We're trying our best to find sponsors. If you want to sponsor a family, reach out to us. Let us know. I love telling them, hey, somebody has paid for your class. What a blessing it is to them, one that will keep on giving. This is something that has eternal benefits. And so we thank you guys for joining us on this adventure. It has been fun. It has been humbling, and it's bringing us clarity as to why certain things are happening in the world, as well as peace, knowing what is going to happen in the end. And so enduring to the end is a big thing. And no matter how many disagreements we have, we need to be humble in our walks. I know today, as I'm making this, is Independence Day, but if they want us to celebrate Pride for an entire month and then celebrate independence, we need to be celebrating being humble and then celebrating our dependence because we depend on our Creator for everything. He set us free just like he set his children free before. We need to learn from their mistakes and be humble and thank him for the support he has given us, the leading and guidance he has given us. It's a blessing. And so we thank you guys for following the Spirit with this journey, not following your own hearts or men, following what the Holy Spirit is doing. We are watching that unfold in real time, and it's a blessing. So we love you guys. I just wanted to share this stuff. Again, this is stuff that will be put in lesson form and hopefully workbook form as I am working on that now. These are things that we're trying to put in there so that we can have workbooks to guide the journey. But you guys are the best. We love you. The Father loves you, and we will see you next time.